Riley Nelson, now the color analyst for BYU football on the radio side with Greg Wrubell. Riley, great to have you with us. How are you?
Great to be on with you today. By the way, guys, I wish I were creative enough to have, done these Halloween, but I have two sons whose birthdays are both within a week of Halloween. So it's been party week all week for us, and hence the balloon arch with bats in the background.
And we hear in the background things a little.
We can appreciate
look,
that.
Look, as
Riley.
fathers, we understand
yes.
what's happening right now.
If there's going to be any audience in the country that can understand crying babies in the background, or I hope he doesn't come pull my computer off the desk or my mischievous 2-year-old that I'm seeing right past my computer. It's going to be the BYU. But a rare work from home. You can see why work from home works very well for most, but people with a 2-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old, it's not the ideal scenario, but it happens to be mine today. So thanks for working with me.
Hey, yeah, totally get it. Totally understand that. Riley Nelson is in the heat of battle with us on BYU Sports Nation. Bronco Mendenhall, your longtime coach and a man that you hold in very high regard, makes his return to LaVell Edwards Stadium for the first time in 6 years since he left BYU for Virginia. What does Bronco Mendenhall mean to you as a former BYU football player?
Outside of like my dad and grandpa, and he's in kind of that non-family where I think a lot of players, you put your high school coach in there. For those that went on missions, I'd put my mission president in there, and I'd put Bronco in there, as far as he's on the short list of men who had an immense impact in my life, who I continue to it's really important to me to keep a relationship up with and to do all that. So that's what he means to me personally. What he means to the program is you lost one of the legends, not just of BYU football, but of college football, right? And LaVell Edwards. And the program met some severe uncertainty that it hadn't known in decades. Obviously, as is well documented, the Croton era, which ended and had a lot of BYU football fans questioning what the future of the program was. And of course, they hired Bronco Mendenhall, who definitely wasn't the sexy pick, probably wasn't the first choice of many fans, but he was able in short order to restore that level of that standard of excellence that BYU had become such accustomed to, and not only reestablish it, but then sustain it over the course of his career there. So he means the world to me, and I think has significant meaning for BYU athletics and BYU football.
Riley, I don't know what or if BYU has anything planned in terms of pregame for Bronco, if they'll do anything. But, there's been a lot of discussion this week. Or how will you respond when Bronco is there? I will be very, very surprised if there's anything other than just cheers and applause for a lot of the reasons that you brought up. I mean, all Bronco did while he was here was win. I expect I don't know if we're going to get a standing ovation, but I expect certainly nothing but applause come Saturday.
Normally, when a player leaves and then comes back and receives an unfavorable reception, it's because the manner in which they left was somehow, it inspired certain negative feelings. I don't think that was the case if the majority of fans want to be honest, and maybe this is a little bit revisionist history, but as I remember it, most BYU fans were kind of saying, you know what, this time with Broncos run its course. So it's not like he left while all the fans were begging him to stay. It's not like he left in some kind of backhanded or, abandoned his team in the middle of a season, or like when the Colts left Baltimore, with semis in the middle of the night. He left on good terms. His time at BYU had kind of run its course with the fan, at least for me, I felt like with the fan base, and he went on to bigger and better things, and BYU was on to bigger and better things. So he should get, he should be treated appropriately upon his return. I can tell you this, though, from knowing Bronco, I know he would prefer that there be zero fanfare. He is all about the competition. He's all about the game of football. And, the kind of sappy, emotional aspect of football is not what he cares for much. So if he can avoid it at all this weekend, he would prefer to.
Well, and Riley, beyond just Bronco, I mean, it's obviously well documented how many former coaches, former players are on that staff. I mean, this is an opportunity. Look, at the end of the day, everybody wants BYU to knock off Virginia and send everybody home with a loss. But it's an opportunity for not just Bronco, but all these former players and coaches to be able for the fans to be able to say, hey, we appreciate everything that you've done for this program.
If for nothing else, the number of ex-players, Robert and I, ex-player, Kelly Papinga, ex-player, Jason Beck, ex-player, Shane Hunter, ex-player, right? These are all guys who donned the Y on their helmet and gave it their all and were meaningful contributors to the teams on which they played that are now all part of that Virginia coaching staff. And these are our own. And if nothing else, I mean, we should be happy, at least for me. I'm not going to advocate. I'm not going to tell anyone how else to feel, but I think one of the main marks of how significant a program or relevant a program is how widespread are they? And BYU for the longest time, we've kind of been a little culture unto ourselves. Yeah, Andy Reid goes off and does his thing, and we've had some assistants that made stops at BYU, but often those native BYU guys stayed at BYU. We should be applauding those that picked up, went all the way to the other part of the country, where BYU is not very relevant in Virginia, yet now all of a sudden people are paying more attention, or at least the name or the brand is elevated in their eyes in the Mid-Atlantic area, and definitely in Virginia, because the vast majority of their football staff played at BYU and started their coaching careers at BYU and had significant stops there. And now they're out there in the ACC, in Virginia, in the Mid-Atlantic, on the East Coast, having success and bringing that great brand of football that's so synonymous with BYU. They're spreading it abroad. And so that should be something I think all BYU fans and proponents of the program should want, because it elevates the brand. If we stay self-contained, we can be great, but we're only great in our own little sphere. The more people that go on to do great things outside of BYU, they will always be part of the program, and it does nothing but elevate and expand.
Amen.
Riley Nelson is with us on BYU Sports Nation. We're discussing the return of Bronco Mendenhall to BYU. Riley, one more question about Bronco and your relationship with him specifically before we move on to preparing for Virginia. And that is because you have experienced Bronco Mendenhall and his coaching style in a very unique way. You mentioned you're very close with him, closer than most. What's your favorite Bronco Mendenhall story that we may not have heard about?
So I smiled when you were asking that question. So I hope everybody can appreciate the fondness with which I tell this story. It was fall camp. I believe it was 2011. We were in the dog days of camp. It was right in the middle. I believe it was the first end of a 2-a-day, and it was super hot. So as you can imagine, we got that summer madness going. And the practice just didn't start off great. I mean, from the first crossover drills, like one-on-ones were normally the first, there was fighting and bickering, and and offense and we were just at that point where we were sick of each other, right? Well, we get into the first team session and a fight breaks out. And while, most coaches, they do like fights because it means guys are competitive and guys are heated. I will admit that this fight probably wasn't more that way. Guys were just being moody, right? And fights, one of the reasons why coaches don't like fights, and Bronco never loved them, even though some coaches secretly love them, is just they take away from practice time. It's a giant distraction. It cuts a big hole. It distracts everybody. It's hard to get everybody back together. Anyway, we have this fight, and I'll never remember. So he sent us all, and we all started having to run gassers, right? Which is the width of the field. You run down and back, and it was just one after another after another. And while we're running, I noticed on the other side of the practice field, he was having the managers move the cold tubs, and he set these cold tubs up in a line that we had as part of our punishment, we lined up, and then we had to get in, do an up down in the cold tub, then get out, do an up down on the grass, and up down in the cold. And he had to set up this succession of up downs in the cold tub, and that makes me laugh so much. He was so mad at us. He was trying to think, how can I get through to these knuckleheads? And so anyway, It was not pre-planned. That's my favorite part of it, is like he sends us on gassers trying to think of like, how can I get to these guys? And so he has the manager set up the cold tubs, and we did up downs in cold tubs for like the next half hour.
Let's ask you our question of the day. Which side of the ball do you think has to have the bigger game in order to win, offense or defense?
Offense. Virginia's built like, to me, this is like, it's like a basketball matchup. Like when you get into March Madness and you see those Big Ten teams that have been playing games in the 50s all year, play against like a BYU style, that it's rare if they score less than 80 and one is run and shoot and get up and down the court. That's the style of football that Virginia plays, right? They're that run and shoot. They're scoring 80 every game. BYU is built a little bit more for like that Big Ten, pound the ball in the post, win games 53-48. By the way, I mean a basketball score 53-48, right? So in my opinion, the defense will be okay. Because they've proven that they're pretty decent at forcing teams to score below their average scoring output. But even if they keep Virginia below their scoring output, that's still a total somewhere in the 30s. And this offense has only scored in the 30s, I think once, maybe twice. I know South Florida. Yeah.
And Utah State.
Yeah, so only twice. South Florida and Utah State is the only time they've got up into the 30s, so not against the P5 opponent. In my opinion, they're going to definitely need to get into the 30s, maybe even approach 40. So that's why I say the offense, because it's going to take a performance from them that I would say we haven't seen yet this year.
Riley, why will a three-down lineman setup and scheme, by necessity mostly because BYU's defensive line is so banged up, work against a program and a high-level quarterback like Brennan Armstrong?
Yeah, well, so Brennan Armstrong is one. The dude is aggressive. He's always looking and always pushing down the field. And I don't think anybody has forced him to have to throw the check down, throw it to the flat, run, scramble forward for 4 yards, scramble forward for 6. And Virginia is not built to march up, to be that patient and that persistent. And so this defense will have success. And let me say this, while he is exceptional, he's yet to prove his ability to just take what the defense gives him for 4 quarters. Most every college quarterback, myself included, when I played, you get antsy, and especially when you're used to picking up yards and chunks and putting points up on the scoreboard, you do something that's outside of character or it's off book. And then when they do that, this defense has proven that they're opportunistic. So the one outlier to that is, they've got this, and I can't remember who's the big number 99 that they bring in, who's the tight end, the quarterback, now tight end, now runs Wildcat with him.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't recall his name, but I've seen the formation and the play.
Yeah, right. Anyway, the one thing, they bring in this big guy, this big former quarterback that runs Wildcat for him. I honestly expect to combat that 3 down front. I expect to see a lot of that. That would be the one outlier there. But that said, Brennan Armstrong is their best player. So you're also not going to come into Provo and not, give your best players many opportunities to be successful as possible. So against the traditional Brennan Armstrong that we've seen so far in this season, this defense will have success, forcing him to do something which he hasn't, which is take what the defense gives for 4 straight quarters. Riley
Nelson is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Keaton Thompson, is that who we're talking about?
That is,
yeah,
it is. He's for all the listeners and everybody out there that's going to watch the game. He's a real, he's 6'6", he's built like an Adonis, and they use him in all sorts of. He'll line up his tight. He's like and this is the staff that coach Taysom. They use him like the Saints kind of use Taysom, except he gets a lot more snaps. But it'll be interesting to me to see how the BYU defense handles that aspect of their offense. I think against Brennan Armstrong and those wide receivers, I think they'll do okay because they've been there before.
Riley, it's great to talk with you. Always fantastic insight, especially into the Bronco Mendenhall situation and preparing for the X's and O's of BYU Virginia. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
You bet, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Riley Nelson on BYU Sports Nation.